Hey guys, Tarke here, and I'm going to run a quick map and talk about some build stuff. Before we run the map real quick, I've made some pretty substantial changes to the character, and this is my chain slash fork, although I'm currently trying out just fork. Insert, split arrow, lightning arrow, ice shot, tornado shot here. All are perfectly viable, perfectly fine. Use whichever one is your favorite. Since I'm on a 5-link, I am currently running split arrow. We'll just start running this map and we'll talk about some things. Now, I'm only using one steel ring, and I recently spec'd out of crit multi to reach over to Valpak, so I've spec'd out some DPS nodes. So my damage is only going to get better than what you are seeing here. Now, you'll also notice that we've spec'd out of Deadeye and we've gone Pathfinder. And I'm going to explain why that is. Now, the reason why I did that was I was really struggling with the movement speed of the build. My last character was a raider using dark ray vectors, and when you play like movement speed stacking characters, and then you play a character which doesn't have stacked movement speed, your world just like falls apart because movement speed is seriously addicting. Like, it is crazy going from a character which runs super quick to going to a character which doesn't run really quick. I'll pick up loot at the end, don't worry. Now, because of this, even though the Deadeye was doing really good and the damage on it was really nice, I ended up having to go, you know what, I can't handle this movement speed. I want to play something different. So what I did is I sat down and I wanted to swap it to a raider because that's what I just played. But since I just played a raider, people were nagging me to play Pathfinder. I was like, you know what, I'll do this character as a Pathfinder. Personally, I'm a massive fan of both, and raider has a similar issue with the movement speed thing I just talked about. When you play high movement speed builds, you only want to play high movement speed builds. When you play raiders, you only want to play raiders. They're just so smooth to map with. Everything about them just feels really good. Now, as you can see, even though we are missing a sick flank, which is a very big DPS boost, even though we're using split arrow, the clear is really good. And this is just with fork, this is not with chain. You can use the chain support gem, and if I had a 6-link, I would use tornado shot with the chain support gem. However, since I'm only on a 5-link, I'm making do just with this. Now, split versus LA versus tornado shot is all just personal preference. This boss will probably take a while, I reckon. Whoops. And I'll show you just what the pure single target like. I have a barrage weapon swap, which is what I do use for single target. But as you can see, just using the split is still perfectly fine. You can get away with just using split arrow for everything. Now, yes, this was only a tier 10 map, not anything too fancy, but considering the character is level 86, considering we are missing a sick link, missing steel rings, etc., it's a pretty good showing. So now let's talk about actual build stuff, what we've changed, so on and so forth. So let's first talk about the whole Pathfinder thing. So Pathfinder, the benefits of Pathfinder is getting this global pen, and this is another very substantial DPS boost that I'm missing, and that is the Wise Oak. The Wise Oak gives you 10% penetration if all of your resists are matched, which is what the goal is with the Doomfletch build, because this is a tri-element build. You're going to have pen on all of the elements, and that'll be a very substantial DPS increase, especially with all the scaling you get from Pathfinder, all the flask effectiveness. That is something like 14%-ish extra pen, which is a very substantial DPS increase. You get some attack speed and movement speed, which is very nice. Nature's Boon, which helps against Reflect, and Reflect is quite scary, which is why I spec'd into Valpak in the end. I was really resistant to spec into Valpak, but I got it just to combat Reflect. More Flask Effect, and then you get Master Alchemist, which gives immunity to status elements while using a Flask. And as you can see, we're not using a Vessel currently, we're not using Xeria's Promise currently, both of which would be very substantial DPS increases. I just haven't got much liquid currency because, you know, my currency went into other items. And then already covered the Veteran Bow. So, what gear am I using? I'm currently using a Doomfletch Prism, and we are running a 5-link with increased crit strikes, split arrow, physical projectile attack damage, weapon or mental damage, and slower projectiles. If you're running a 5-link, you would drop slower proj, if you don't use split arrow, and you would use either lightning arrow or tornado shot in GMP. Currently, I am not doing that. You can map with it. I've been mapping with it earlier. It's perfectly fine, just personal preference. In the off socket, I have a blink arrow. When you get a 6-link, I'm running a floating Val Haste. I would take that out, put the blink arrow there, and then put in my stick flank. For the 6th link, if you do decide to stick with Spit Arrow, you can go for Chain for additional map clear, you can go with increased critical strike damage, or you can go with faster attacks, whatever feels smoothest to you and what colours you're working with. You don't want to corrupt your Doomfletch Prism for an additional arrow because the Wed roll is very nice, so try not to, but they are cheap enough that if you really are desperate to, if you're doing Tornado Shot or Barrage shenanigans, you can corrupt it for an additional projectile. The Quiver is a Rigwald's Quills. We have this transferred into a Same as Gift because MTX Transmog is very important, and I needed a Quiver which better matched my gear. Rigwald's Quills is how we're getting Fork. The increased accuracy rating, it's okay, but this is a very good Quiver to corrupt. Since the implicit accuracy is actually it is a fairly substantial DPS increase, having accuracy scaling crit builds is really nice, but they're cheap enough that you can spam corrupt them and hope for the +1, and I would always pick a +1 Quiver over this. -10 fire res, oh well, lightning res, a little bit of life gain on hit, reduced proj speed, proj damage, and fork. With this reduced proj speed and the slow proj, that's why my split looks like, you know, like nuclear missiles slowly traveling forward. In the boots, we're using Red Blade Tramplers. I think I consider these best in slot. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they're best in slot. You could also use Brine Rock Whalers. The reason why I think these are best in slot is the adds up to 5 to 10 flat physical damage to attacks. Again, Doomfletch Prism, the whole reason we use Doomfletch Prism is gain 110% of both fizz damages, X damage of each element. So basically 330% of your flat fizz as elemental damage. So getting flat fizz any way you can is amazing. These also give up to 70-75 life if I remember correctly, and up to 30% fire resistance. They give you some movement speed and unaffected by burning ground. The unaffected by burning ground is actually kind of nice with the Var Pact, but it's not really needed. Hello, random cat. And then we are also using a Legacy Meganord's Girdle for even more flat physical. You don't need to run this. I'm mostly running it just because I can, since it is a Legacy League. You can just use a Rustic Sash or just a stacked life resist belt. If you do just run a rare belt, you will have a much easier time capping your resist, which is currently my main struggle. It's the main thing I'm struggling to get at the moment. It does have the % life on there, so it scales very well with the Comb's Heart, which is the best in slot chest piece if you're doing this as life. A tiny bit of cold res, up to 20%. Ideally, you're looking for one with as much cold res as possible, and the increased flask life recovery rate just means your life flask is slightly less terrible. For gloves, you want gloves which look something like this. You want grip gloves for the increased projectile attack damage with a flat fizz roll, very important. You want flat fizz wherever you can get it. Maximum life, and then any resistances you want. The perfect gloves would be this with like increased attack speed or accuracy on there. If you can get the accuracy or the attack speed on there, great, but just worry about your life, worry about your resists. Steel rings. Steel rings are bae. You need steel rings. Without the steel rings, the build performs fine. With 2 steel rings, and that's what I'm aiming to get next, the build face rolls all the content, and that's what allows you to get away with running links like Chain and not ruining your damage completely. Now, you do want int somewhere on your gear. I'm covering all of my int requirements. You see I don't have Primal Spirit, I don't have Wisdom of the Glade. With just this one ring, I have 116 int, and most of my stuff is leveled up. The Enfeeble is currently at a low level. That is the main downside. So if you can get a int-based amulet, great. If not, oh well. The Enfeeble doesn't need to be fully leveled. I'll get into that later. But basically, you want a steel ring which looks something like this. As much flat fizz as possible, as much life as possible. Int if you can get it. And then resistances. Ideally, I'd have this ring again here. But currently here, I've just got a 2-stone ring with some fizz, some life, some resist. Really nothing that special. And then my amulet is a flat fizz crit multi life. Unfortunately, the base isn't very good for me. I would want a pure int base, or ideally a strength int base. There are also loads of talismans which are very powerful, but getting a good talisman is quite difficult. Life, having the crit charts, having the crit multi is really nice. And if this had actual resist on it rather than a 9% roll in the rarity, then we'd be seriously laughing, but oh well. In weapon swap, I have a second Doomfletch Prism with elemental focus, increased critical strikes, barrage, weapon elemental damage, and physical projectile attack damage. On a 6th link, you could put in either slower projectiles or point blank. Point blank will do more damage, but you then need to face tank rares and bosses, which is fine in softcore, but for hardcore, I would run a slower proj instead, so you can maintain your distance and rely on decoy totem to face tank stuff for you. And then you want to use a just rare broadhead quiver for your single target. The reason why we use the Rigwald's Quills is, again, it's for map clear, it's for fork. You don't need fork on your single target setup. So get something like this. Broadhead is the best because, again, the flat fizz. You want something with like flat fizz, more flat fizz, crit multi, life, wed. I just picked this up because it cost me like 6 chaos, sorry, and it fixed my resistances. So, speaking about my resistances, you can see currently I'm just 135, 135, and 143. And that is with Cloth and Chain. Cloth and Chain is fine to pick up if you need resistances because it means you can put your Blue Dream here, giving you 15% chance to generate a power charge on kill, which is very, very nice. The resist problem is very solvable because, again, look at my 2 rings. Not very good in terms of resist. My amulet, not very good in terms of resist. We have a low roll on the Meganauds. We have a okay roll on this. And, you know, you could get better gloves. Again, for the helm, we're using the Gull. The Gull is the best helm in the game, in my opinion. It's like a mini headhunter. It's just really, really underrated. Well, it's just use it. Has up to 40% cold res, has life. If you can get helm enchant, use a helm enchant. I can't get any good ones. For jewels, I have increased damage, crit multi, res. This was just, I needed a resistance jewel, and this is the best I had lying around. Ideally, you want something like increased damage, or projectile damage, or crit multi, something like that. Maximum life is the most important role, and then resistances if you need them. Here, as I've already covered, we have the Blue Dream. Here we have a increased damage, life, resistance. Here we have Lionized Fall, which converts all of this damage to apply to bows, and it's also about getting our leech for our bar packs. And here we have lightning damage of maximum life, all res, and chaos res. If you can fit chaos res in your jewels, great. If you can't, no biggie. Look at what the completed skill tree would look like. It would look something like this. You can see with like mid to high tier gear, you're going to have about 7.5k life at level 90. With very good gear, you're going to be pushing 8k, maybe 8k plus if you've got stacked strength rolls and all your stuff. But to do that, you need to have very good resist, so you're probably going to have to get resist on a lot of your jewels. And talking about ascendancy options, etc., etc. So as you all know, I originally planned on doing this as a Deadeye. The reason I originally wanted to do this as Deadeye was for the +1 chain, meaning that I wouldn't need to run the chain gem, but as covered, I just felt too slow. If you drop the Gull, if you run a Devoto's Devotion, you can make do, but the Gull, in my opinion, is just too good to drop. But you can stick with Deadeye. Using this for chain instead of using the chain gem will give you the most raw damage. Now, since I have changed this tree to Valpact, I didn't originally intend on Valpact, I think I would recommend Raider as the go-to option. The problem with Raider, however, is you desperately need the frenzy charges to make Raider good. So to fit those in, you're either looking at a much higher level character, or you need to complete the sacrilege, which is cutting life. Cutting life never feels good, so that would be a softcore option, in which case you would probably cut some life, and then you'd have to make up the life by doing stuff like this, doing stuff like this, doing stuff like this, and you'd have 178%, 6.7k with the combs. Could get this 2-pointer as well, 186. It's, you know, cutting it a bit fine, but it is just about doable. Just about, but again, not something I would recommend to hardcore players. So for the hardcore players, I think the go-to recommendation, if you want the good movement speed, which is what I'm desperately chasing, is go for the Pathfinder. Now, with Pathfinder, you still get good movement speed, you get the penetration, and you can still push into stuff like maximum frenzy charges later on. You can push into more maximum life, max life, max life. You have very respectable at level 90. You have options of loads of very efficient damage nodes. You have the options of stuff like phase acro. There's a lot of growth with this tree, which is very good. So if you want to if you feel like you have enough damage, just keep filling in all the life nodes that you're missing. If you feel like you just want more damage, then you can fill in Force of Nature for 4 points. You can fill in Ranger Start, go on to Aspect of the Eagle, etc., etc., Sniper. There's loads of really efficient damage nodes. As you can see, the build is doing perfectly fine, however, with a very defensive, greedy-centric tree. My links and how I'm generating power charges and all that other stuff, because that's the main questions that I get. So power charges is Blue Dream. In the helm, we have a Summon Ice Golem for our Ice Golem, Blasphemy, Enfeeble. The reason I'm running a Blasphemy Enfeeble is just to prevent one-shots. If anything gets close to me, it gets enfeebled, it's less likely to one-shot me. Seems good. Also, if you do the point blank barrage setup on bosses, you're less likely to get one shot by bosses. It makes our evasion feel more powerful. It's just a very good setup. If you use cast on hit gloves, like Ellie Weakness cast on hit gloves, or you have a cast on hit herald setup, it won't mess up your enfeeble. Your cast on hit gloves will still cast everything on the screen, and then when they get close to you, the enfeeble will then override it, because you want the defensive cast when stuff is in your face. That is the goal there. Here, we are using Herald Device, Poacher's Mark in a cast on hit setup. The reason I'm using the Poacher's Mark here is I want Frenzy Charge generation. Since it's Valpact, I'm not running Blood Rage. You can use the Green Dream instead of the Blue Dream, which will give you Frenzies instead of powers here. But Poacher's Mark, in my opinion, is just a better cast than Assassin's Mark if you're already generating power charges. You get increased fast charges gained. This combined with Pathfinder means you always have your fast charges up. When I can afford a Vessel of Binktar, it will mean I'll have 100% uptime on a Vessel of Binktar. That's a pretty substantial increase. You also get better flat life and better flat mana than through Assassin's Mark that you get on kill. This is on hit. The cursed enemies have less evasion. It makes your build more reliable because it's a crit build. It's just really good. Just use it. When I was not running Valpact, that was a weird way of speaking. Before I took Valpact, I was actually running cast on hit Warlord's Mark using Blood Rage. The reason why I did that is it gave me extra Physmet. I kind of liked it, but I prefer the Poacher's Mark now. Floating Val Haste, which, as I said, you put the blink arrow here when you get 6-link bow. In the boots, Val Lightning Trap, Decoy Totem, cast on damage taken, Immortal Cool. Val Lightning Trap shocks everything. This is very important. It's a very substantial DPS increase on bosses. You pre-lay it on strong boxes or anything like that, breaches. Decoy Totem tanks everything for you. It is completely and utterly busted. So yes, that is like the basic synopsis. Fork is good enough. Use Chain if you want more map clear. Use any bow skill that you like. I'm currently using Split because I like Split. Weapon Swap Barrage. All that good. If you're interested in a CI version of this character, look at my previous video where I compare life versus CI. And again, this build will be aiming for about 7.5 to 8k life once I have the full package complete. For people wondering how expensive this build is, it's a bit on the expensive side. It's not crazy expensive, but you do want combs, you do want steel rings. Steel rings cost a lot in hardcore. Just getting a white steel ring is about 50c. You can use Essences of Contempt to craft on them, and that's how I craft my steel rings. Essence of Contempt forces a flat fizz roll on there. But yeah, that's the main two costs. The main cost is the comb site and getting 2 steel rings. The quivers are like 10c, the bows are like 20c. And yes, a bunch of items just got listed on pv.trade. I'll keep you guys updated as I keep pushing the character. I'm really enjoying it, and I look forward to seeing how high we can get it. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.